So we'll now do chapter 15 in the book, which is corporate valuation. First, some basic questions. Why do we need corporate valuation? So first also let's understand what do we mean by corporate valuation. So corporate valuation means, as the term implies, coming up with the value of your corporation. How is this different from what we've studied in the previous chapter? So what did we do in the previous chapter? Yeah, so in the previous chapter we focused on a project. Now what we are talking about is we want to come up with the value of the overall corporation. Okay, now when you are coming up with the value of a overall corporation, why is this important? There are like a ton of reasons. One is, if you are let's take a step back. What's the most important goal or the most fundamental goal of senior management at a company? To maximize the value of a company. So if you are talking about maximizing the value of a company, you better know how to come up with the value of a company. Now when we say maximize value, are we talking about Serish, maximizing book value or market value? Why? Yeah, so owners of the company have ownership in the form of shares. And what do owners of the company want? High book value or high share value? Share value, because that's what, so when they are calculating their net worth, they don't look at book value, they look at market value. So if we can get the market value of a company from the stock market, then why go through an elaborate exercise of figuring out the value of a company? Yeah, so but if I want to know the value of FFC or Engro or Hubco, I can just go to the stock market, see the stock price. So that means the value at which the stock is trading is not the real value. But that is the tangible. If I go buy something.
Underpriced or overpriced?
Okay, so Haneen. Okay, let me just make a statement. Let's assume that our best estimate of the real value of a company is given by the stock price multiplied by the number of shares. Why do we still need to do this? Okay, let me just give you a more basic answer. Now you've fallen into a trap where I've set a context and you are just stuck in that context. How many companies in Pakistan are actually publicly traded? Yeah, about 600, maybe 700. How many companies exist? Way more than that. So even if you take the stock market price as a real indicator of actual price and value, that covers only a very small subset of companies, and hence you need a mechanism to come up with the value of all the companies that are not on the stock market. That's the most basic answer. And then, as you alluded to, even if the stock price is a given price, you also want a way of calculating based on your own assumptions. Maybe the stock is overpriced, underpriced, your company, you want to do a treasury stock operation. And when do you do a treasury stock operation? If your shares in the market are overvalued, undervalued? Undervalued. How do you figure out whether they are undervalued? Based on the method that we are going to talk about now. Another thought would be, can you use this method to evaluate whether your management team is doing well or not? Yeah. If you come up with corporate value and that value is going up, that means your management is doing a good job. If the value is coming down, that means management is destroying value. Then fire the management. Bring in people like you. Okay, who can do a better job. All right. The other. Okay, so that's one larger point. We will see more details on this later. Have you studied the dividend discount model? So you have. Okay. So when you use the Gordon growth model, if I tell you a company has dividend D1 and the growth rate is D, what's the price per share? So Saad? No, Umar. What's the value of a price of a share, assuming dividend of D1 in 1 year's time, a constant growth rate of G? What's the price of the share? D1 over G over the required return minus G. So if you have an expected dividend and you have a certain required rate of return and a growth, can you come up with the value of the company using this method? How? What did this give you? And then what's the price of the value of the company? Price multiplied by number of shares authorized or outstanding? Number of shares outstanding. So if you can do this, why do we need a corporate valuation model? So we are coming up with what the market value should be based on this. Yeah, that's a possible answer. Next. Yeah. Very good. Okay, partly, but actually the first answer was more on the money. The point is, even public companies, like, do they all pay dividends? No. So companies, lots of companies don't pay dividends. There are some companies that pay dividends, but it's a very irregular dividend pattern, so you can't really tell what they're doing. So the dividend discount model often does not work. What we are going to talk about today is a model that can work, that is much more robust, so it can be applied in many more scenarios. Okay, before we get into the details of the model, let's understand a couple of definitions. So we'll understand what assets in place are, and then what do we mean by financial or operating assets. Okay, I'll say this very briefly right now, and then there'll be a slide with more details coming up. Assets in place are the same as operating assets. So these are the assets that a company uses in its regular operation. So would working capital be in this definition? Yes. Would the property, plant, equipment that a company uses for its regular operation be part of this? It would be. What about marketable securities? So marketable securities is the company has extra cash that is kept somewhere, maybe in T-bills or so on. Okay, that classifies as financial or non-operating assets. Okay. Now let's look at assets in place. What is the other term that I gave this? So I also call this operating assets. So assets in place are tangible, such as buildings, machinery, inventory. Usually we expect the assets in place to grow, and the free cash flow is being generated because of this. So if you have a factory that is manufacturing pharmaceuticals, okay, where is your free cash flow coming from? By selling pharmaceuticals. Where are the pharmaceuticals coming from? From your property, plant, equipment, and so on. So these operating assets are what are helping you generate your free cash flow. The way you come up with the value of operations for a given organization is you forecast all your free cash flow and then discount it back to the present using your weighted average cost of capital. So that is the procedure that we will study in detail today. Okay. So what I just said is, to come up with the value of operations, you project free cash flows. That begs the question, what do we mean by free cash flow? To some extent we have seen this in the previous chapter, and here is a definition that you need to be very familiar with. Free cash flow is your NOPAT. What's NOPAT, Farhad? So this is your net operating profit after tax. It's also your EBIT into 1 minus T. Why do you add back depreciation? Yeah, it's non-cash, you know this in your sleep. So you add back depreciation. And then why are we subtracting gross investment in operating capital? So Taimur, why do we subtract this? Are you still sleeping? Okay. Exactly. So any money that you spend on investment in operating capital is also cash out. There are 2-3 important points here. One is, when we talk about free cash flow, this is cash flow available to whom? And who is the firm? What is the firm? Which people? That's it? How are investors different from? What's the difference between investors and shareholders? For example? Yeah, exactly. So debt holders, people, if a bank has given a large loan to a company to buy plant and equipment, is the bank an investor? Yeah. So the bank is an investor. Preferred shareholders are investors? Yeah. So the free cash flow is the cash flow available to all investors. Okay, and since it's the cash flow available also to debt holders, that's why we are not subtracting interest over here. That's one point. Another point is when we think about free cash flow, it is the cash flow after the company has made necessary investments in order to continue to be a profitable and properly run organization. So can the investors say, for example, that we don't want to spend money on the maintenance of our equipment, so that money should also be available to us? What would be the issue with that?
It's already been spent, right? It's not available.
Well, let's actually, if it's the start of the year and they are projecting the year, if the investor starts saying that also give us money instead of investing it on machines, then that is hurting the operation. So we are not supposed to take out any money that will hurt the operation. The assumption is you are spending all the money that you need to spend in order to keep your regular operation going. So obviously the regular investment in working capital, the regular investment in fixed capital needs to continue. Okay, the other point is when we talk about investment in working capital, so Afan, what's working capital? Is it just day-to-day expenses? What about
even maintaining short-term?
Okay, short-term. So next name Nabia. What about money on new equipment? Would that be considered over here? Is new equipment part of operating capital? Exactly. So we just defined operating capital. Assets in place, I said, are also operating capital. So the equipment, the plant that you have is part of your operating capital. So if you are spending money to expand your plant, should that money spent on expanding plant be subtracted? That should also be subtracted. So Sunera, how come in the last chapter we did not subtract money on we did not consider this money on fixed assets, but here we are in the definition of free cash flow? Do you recall, when we did the last chapter, how did we come up with our cash flow during the year? In the spreadsheet that we just did, how did we come up with our free cash flow during the year? I want everybody to be thinking about this. What I'm asking is, in the last chapter, chapter 11, when we came up with our free cash flow during the year, do you recall subtracting the money spent on fixed capital, fixed assets? Yeah, so we only subtracted fixed capital in the first year. Yeah, because then after that we are just taking a simple project where we spend, we are evaluating a project. Now what are we doing? Now we are evaluating the whole corporation or the whole company. So during the life of the company, we need to estimate how much money we will be spending on fixed capital or longer term assets. So that money that is being spent on longer term assets also needs to be subtracted in order to come up with a free cash flow. Yeah. Okay. So the way we come up with the value of operation is you have simply you forecast all your free cash flows and you discount all those free cash flows at WACC, and that will give you the value of operation. So if I tell you that for a given company, let me just give you a really simple example. So this is time 1, time 2, time 3. Let's say that every year you expect to generate 10 million in free cash flow, and I tell you that WACC is equal to, let's say, 5%, very low cost of capital. So what is the value of operations for this company? So the operations are generating 10 million every year forever, perpetuity. So Saad Afridi, what's the value of operations? So, okay, Muhammad Ali, can you give me the answer? How did you do that? So you do 10 divided by, which is 50. Okay, so the value of operations, what is the value of operations here? It is simply the present value of all the free cash flow. Okay, so that's 200. Now, so we briefly talked about the assets in place. What was the other term for assets in place? Your operating assets. and we talked about free cash flow. We talked about the fact that the value of operations is the present value of your free cash flow. Now let's talk about non-operating assets. Examples of non-operating assets are marketable securities. So what are these marketable securities? Yeah, so is this part of your regular operation? They are not part of your regular operation. So the value of operations that we just calculated does not include your non-operating assets. The most common classic non-operating asset is marketable securities. When companies in Pakistan have extra cash, what do you think they do with that extra cash? Haneen?
Government.
And where do you think they invest mostly?
Stock market.
Yeah, do you think they put it in the stock market?
Some of them.
Actually, most of the money goes in T-bills, in short-term government securities. Why? Because that's the lowest risk. Do you think a company, and if they are buying stocks, that's just a very risky investment. Typically they invest in money market funds. Money market funds are short-term, mostly short-term treasuries where the risk is relatively low. Okay, what about, so you can also have ownership. Is it possible that a company like Engro might have some ownership in another company? So that would also be an investment. If that's a small ownership where there is no control on the other company, that would also be called non-operating asset. The value of non-operating asset is usually very close to marketable securities figure that is reported on the balance sheet. As you might have studied in accounting, when a company reports marketable securities on the balance sheet, there is a requirement that the number should be based on fair market value. So if you see marketable securities equals 17 million rupees, is it reasonable to assume that 17 million represents the fair market value? Generally it is reasonable to assume that on that day, yeah. Okay, now does this make sense? The total value of a company or a corporation would be the value of operations plus the value of non-operating assets. In the simplistic example I gave, what was the value of operations? So the value of operations was 200. Did that include non-operating assets? It did not include non-operating assets. Non-operating is the extra money you have sort of sitting in the bank or sitting in a money market fund. So non-operating assets are not included. But if a company has 10 million in cash, does that add to the overall value of the company? It adds to the overall value of the company, and if you are calculating the overall value of the company, you simply take value of operations plus the value of non-operating assets. Okay, now who has a claim on corporate value? So if a given company has a total value of say 100, who has the first claim against this 100? Yeah, it is the bondholders, those who have lent money. So let's say bondholders have a total claim worth 20 million. Okay, their claim comes first. When we calculated the value of operations, did we subtract interest? We did not. The value of operations was based on free cash flow, which is the money available to all investors. Okay, once you come up with the value of a company being say 100, the first claim is from the debt holders. The second claim comes from whom? Preferred shareholders. Let's say that is 30. Then why is the share of the common shareholders called the residual claim or the remaining claim? Because whatever is left then belongs to the common shareholders. So notice that if the company value shoots up to 150, who benefits the most? The common shareholders. If the company value comes down to 40, who loses the most? The common shareholders. So greatest risk, greatest reward. The value of the preferred share can change. So typically preferred shareholders get a dividend against par value. Okay, so here is these are good questions. So I'll ask this and then I'll ask the class to see who's understanding this. The question is, do companies take that extra cash and invest in operating assets? Do they invest in gold? Okay, so what do? The question is, if a company has extra cash, how would it decide whether or not to invest in operating assets? Maheen, right? So how would they decide whether or not to invest in operating assets versus, say, non-operating assets? Yeah, exactly. So this ties to what we've studied earlier. If a company has extra cash and company has positive NPV projects, then a company should first invest in those positive NPV projects. If a company doesn't have positive NPV projects, what should it do? Yeah, then it is a combination. Either it should pay out dividends, or if it expects positive NPV projects next year, then it might put the money in marketable securities. If the company expects or company believes that the return on T-bills is very low and gold is going to do well in the future, okay, what can they invest in gold? They can. Okay, especially in Pakistan, gold is a very good hedge against inflation. All right, so value of gold might actually appreciate at a higher rate than inflation, unlike T-bills. Okay, so companies can do any of the above. So now how do we are going to now apply the corporate valuation model. So the first thing you do when you apply the corporate valuation model is look at the financial statements and forecast cash flows based on the accounting statements. Once you have forecasted the cash flows, how will you come up with the value of operation? You will discount and come up with the present value. Now this model can be applied to a company that does not pay dividends. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So I'm making a point that a model can be applied to a company that does not pay dividends. This free cash flow model, why is it good? So you can value any company whether or not it pays dividends. It can be used for privately held companies. So what are privately held companies? Sidra, so name? Sidra, right? What are privately held companies? Yeah, so basically private companies are companies that are not publicly traded, not listed on the stock. They can be a corporation, but they are not listed. Okay, so this model can be used to value those companies. Can this model be used to value a division of a company? It can. Why is that useful, Larib, to value a division? So one reason is to see whether the division is doing well. Any other reasons? Yeah, which division has the most value? Any other reason? If you are buying some division or selling some division, you need to do a value. If you are evaluating the head or the manager of that division, does it make sense to look at whether the value is changing or not? So there are several reasons for doing this. Now let's actually do this problem. We are going to come up with, we are going to apply this model to a company. So I'm giving you this data. Free cash flow at time 0, so for the year that just ended, is 20 million. You need to use, let me tell you what you need to find, and I'll tell you what information you need to use. So first I want you to find the value of operations. Second, I want you to find the total value of the corporation. Then 3, I want you to find the claim of all the investors. Okay, so do these 3 things: value of operations, total value, and the claim. You can make an assumption that the growth rate is perpetual. So this is the constant growth of 5%. So you need to apply the Gordon growth model. Okay, so applying the Gordon growth model, do 1, 2, and 3. So the value of operation should be equal to free cash flow at time 1 over a lot of people are making the classic mistake of taking free cash flow at time 0. Okay, so what's the value of operation? Free cash flow over. So does everybody get this? The value of operation is 420 million. So if that's the value of operation, what is the total value of the corporation? So the value of the corporation, so value of corp is how much? 420 plus, which is 520. So if the value of the, so why do we do this? Why is the value of the corporation 520? Why are we adding 100? So the value of a company is the value of operations plus the non-operating assets, which is our marketable securities. So the total value of the company is 520. All right. Well, right now we haven't even talked about preferred stock or debt. So right now what we have said is the following. What we are saying is, if you have this total company, the total value of this company is 520 million. Now who has a claim against this 520 million? All the investors, which is the debt holders, the preferred shareholders and the common shareholders. What's the claim? Who has the first claim? Which is how much?
460 to 520.
So the first claim comes from the debt holders, which is 200. How much, Aisha, is the claim of the preferred stockholders? So this 200 was the debt holders, the 50 is the preferred shareholders, and what is the residual claim? So 270 is the claim of whom? Common shareholders. So it's the basic concept is reasonably straightforward. This allows you to come up with so is it undervalued or overvalued? What's the importance of this? Yeah, so actually, is it logical here to talk about overvalued, undervalued? So are we using the 210 million? No, the 210 million is simply the book value. Does it surprise you? That the market value is more than book value? Normally this is true. Does this imply that management has added some value? Yeah, because the initial value of assets that was purchased, net assets is 210. The market value is more than that. So the value has been added. People are mentioning here overvalued, undervalued. What does that mean? Actually, I'll just explain. I don't think we've not covered this. Exactly. So this is outside this course, but since the term came up, I'll just explain. When you say a given company is overvalued or undervalued, what you are really doing is looking at the value in the stock market, and if you believe that the value of a company based on your analysis is more than what the stock market is saying, then are you saying your company is overvalued or undervalued? Undervalued. So if you believe the value is 270, according to the stock market the value is 250, then you say that the market it's undervalued. In the market it's undervalued. Okay, so when we say undervalued, we are saying from the perspective of the market. Okay, so please just everybody quiet so people can understand each other's question. So ask the question, and I'm going to ask somebody here to answer.
20 is the market value
Of what?
of the company.
So he is making a comment. 520 is the market value of the company. Yeah. So actually, what do you think, Afan? Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So you can think of it as the total market. That's because you are listening to half of what I'm saying and not listening to the other half. Okay. So please, everybody just be quiet. So 520 represents our estimate of the overall value of the company. Okay, it's the value of operations. It's not a book value. It's a value based on discounting future cash flows. All right. Now we are told that the debt, market value of debt is 200. We are not explicitly told market value, but that's the default assumption. So market value of debt is 200. Market value of preferred shares is 50, which is covered here and here. So the market value, according to us, of the company is 270 of the common shares. Market value of common shares is 270. Okay, so that actually is the core point. Now let me just again check your basic understanding. How does a company, when a company we say has a lot of brand equity, okay, a company that has a good brand, how is that reflected in these numbers? It's in the partly in the growth rate. Let me just make this question slightly different and something that I think should be somewhat interesting. Let's say you have two companies in Karachi, both set up a lot of coffee and tea outlets across the city. Okay, one is Starbucks, which happens to have a great brand, and the other is a company that does not have a strong brand. But let's say that the quality of the coffee and the equipment that they use and the base cost that they incur are the same for both these organizations, both for Starbucks and for X, okay, for company X. All right, now how will this analysis demonstrate that Starbucks has more brand equity? Imagine that all the costs are the same.
Free cash flow would be great.
Yeah, the core point is that a company that has a lot of brand equity will probably be able to sell the coffee at a higher rate. Okay, they might even be able to sell more coffee. So that will not be reflected on the balance sheet, but it will show up because on the balance sheet the book value of both companies will be identical because their asset base is similar. But the company that has higher brand equity will have a higher value of operations. So if Starbucks tries to sell its operation, including the brand, it will be able to sell at a higher price. Okay, so that is a fundamental point. Yeah. So the question is, we calculate free cash flow in the future. What about assets? So in the value of operations, you have your current assets. You are not, as in your free cash flow is based on the cash that you can generate minus all the expenses that you can incur. Okay, so they are there. You don't need to do that. That doesn't need to be an explicit part of your analysis. We can discuss it after class if you're not clear. Okay, so we are actually, let me just wrap this up, then I can do questions. So all the next few slides over here are simply material that I covered on the previous slide. So does this look familiar? This is the value of operations. Does this look familiar? Okay, so we've done all this. What's the value of equity?
270.
So the value of equity is the 270 million. Total corporate value is done right here. So that's it. In the next class we'll do market value added analysis. We will have our quiz on chapter 11, and on Monday, a week from today, we'll have our extra class after this class.